All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Lawlytics Basic Blogging Clinic. My name is Dan Jaffe, and I will be hosting this along with Victoria Blute, who's going to be doing the bulk of the webinar. Today we're going to be dividing this presentation into three different segments. The first, Victoria, who I'll introduce in just a moment, is going to be taking, and she's going to be going into quite a bit of depth about the basics of blogging and how to do that in a way that benefits your law firm. After that, we're going to play a bit of a game and do a demo of how you can construct a blog post in a way that's easy, fun, and meaningful. And then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. My name is Dan Jaffe, and I'm one of the co-founders of Lawlytics. I'm also the CEO, and I practiced law for about 10 years before going into technology full-time about 7 years ago. I used to blog a lot in my law practice, and I'm a true believer in the power of blogging to not only promote your practice online and get visitors and potential clients and referral sources to your website and through your door, but also to establish and maintain relationships with them and with peers in a way that really benefits your firm, not only financially, but in a way that is rewarding beyond just the marketing benefits. It can create a lot of camaraderie. It can create a dialogue between legal professionals in various areas that wouldn't otherwise know each other or have an opportunity to connect. Let's talk about the game that we're going to be playing at the end because it does require some setup. The game that we're going to be playing is a lot like Mad Libs, and it had been years since I had played Mad Libs as a kid, and then my son started doing them recently with his friends, and so it kind of brought this back, and it occurred to me that blogging can be fun in that way and also come out with a compelling story. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking for your input, the input of the participants throughout this webinar. For the first half of Victoria's presentation, what I want you to do if you want to participate is think about an event. Pick a legal topic. So an event could be a holiday, it could be some kind of milestone, it could be a concert, whatever. Pick a legal topic and then pick a pop culture reference. We have not Justin Bieber there in parentheses because we noticed a few years back when he was having his legal troubles that a lot of people would blog about him as kind of low-hanging legal fruit. And it's kind of an inside joke here at Lawlytics, but we just got a little tired of seeing people reference Justin Bieber in their blogs, and so he's off limits, but anything other than Justin will go. About halfway through Victoria's presentation, we're going to take a brief pause and assess the input that we've gotten. And from there, we're going to establish what these three things are, and then I'm going to ask you for some more input. So during this first half, as you're thinking about these things, if you want to participate, the best way to share them with us is to put it right in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. Now, a few housekeeping matters before we start moving forward. This webinar is being recorded. The recording, including the video and all the slides, will be made available to you within a day or two after this webinar is over, so no need to take notes or screenshots or anything. That will all be there. At the end, we're going to have a question and answer session. We're going to move through the materials and then the game for that matter as well fairly rapidly. And so, barring anything unforeseen, we're not going to stop in the middle to answer questions, but we will take time to get to everybody's questions at the end. So as you have questions as the webinar goes along, feel free also to put those in the question area. If you have any trouble with your audio at any point, please raise your hand in the GoToWebinar control panel or just type it into the questions area, and we'll be monitoring that as well. So I want to introduce Victoria Blute. For those of you who haven't attended any of our recent webinars and are meeting her for the first time, she's our community manager and she is an expert blogger. She does a lot of our blogging here internally at Lawlytics, and she has a really good sense of what makes a blog not only interesting, readable, and appealing to the search engines, but also shareable. And all those things are very important when you're blogging for maximum value. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the controls over to Victoria. Give me just a moment while I do that. And Victoria, you should have controls now.
I do. All right, can we see my screen, Dan?
We can.
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning and afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to discuss during this webinar. So here's what I'm going to cover. To begin this, perusing the internet the other day, I ran across an article that talked about how often bloggers should publish. And in regard to frequent blogging, the author had written, quote, "It's hard as hell to pull it off if you're a single author publisher. It requires organization, discipline, resourcefulness, and creativity." I agree with the second part. I don't agree with the first part. I think if attorneys take anything away from this webinar, I hope it's that by being prepared, by being productive, by being committed, and knowing what methods will help you to be all of those things, you can, by yourself, successfully do all of your online marketing, no outside help required. Blogging, and I mean blogging well and blogging often, isn't quote-unquote hard as hell. Not at all, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So here's what we'll talk about in today's webinar. First, we'll talk a little bit about blogging in general. So whether you've never blogged or you're currently blogging, I'll tell you what kind of blogging will help support your law firm's business. Then we'll talk about how often you should be publishing new content to your blog and how you can set yourself up to make sure that you have a regular schedule. After that, we'll talk about what makes a good blog post and what sort of blog posts get a lot of attention on the web. After that, we'll discuss the structure of a blog post and how you can organize your thoughts in a way that makes it easy for potential clients to follow. And very last, I'll talk about how to turn your blog into an asset. And when I'm done there, Dan's going to join in to give you a demo about blogging with Lawlytics, as well as talking about that game we discussed earlier. So if you're joining us today, you're clearly interested in, or at least curious about blogging. But there are different stages where you could potentially be at this point. So we're going to look at those various stages and talk about why, no matter where you are, you should be blogging. So let's start with the first bullet. If you're not blogging already, start today. You should be. There are a number of reasons why I say this, but I think one of the biggest ones has to do with how we use information in today's world. Before the way that we currently use the internet, and before the internet altogether, our culture was really an information economy. An information economy is an economic stage that comes after sort of basic early hunting and agricultural advances in manufacturing. Sometimes it can come along concurrently with that part, but information economies use knowledge as a main source of value, so much so that the majority of the workforce contributes to society by taking information-related jobs, and most products created are information-based products. To give you an example of that, the United States were an agricultural economy starting in the early 1800s until we had some major advances in science and technology. We then transitioned to an information economy in the 21st century. A stat from the 2009 CIA World Factbook cited that more than 60% of workers in our labor force were involved in information-related jobs. However, our culture is in the middle of a very interesting change. We are moving from an information economy to what we call an information society, and that is a culture that doesn't pay for information anymore. Information societies are defined by civilizations that, that rely on the creation and distribution and use of information rather than relying on information as their most valuable money-making material, something that is meant to be hoarded and protected at all costs. So in knowing that, where do you come in as an attorney? In knowing that we're now an information society, one other thing that's worth keeping in mind is that the information that's being created and distributed is the information that's being used by search engine users to inform their decisions and help them answer their questions. And your potential clients have lots of questions that they need answers to. So by blogging about the types of questions that your potential clients have and giving them clear, understandable answers to those questions, you put your firm in a position that gives potential clients reason to trust you, reason to engage your firm, and ultimately to hire your firm over a bunch of others. Okay, so I've just said that blogging is a really valuable part of your marketing strategy as a law firm. But one question that we sometimes get here at Lawlytics from our clients is questions from those who say, well, I'm blogging and I'm not seeing any changes in the number of clients I have. I'm not seeing more business roll in. What is going on? And the question that we tend to ask there is, okay, you're blogging. How often are you publishing? So if you're already blogging, fantastic. If you're not publishing frequently, you may want to change your strategy a little bit. Blogging is a great way to give your potential clients the information that they need about the next steps to take with their problem, but we need to think about both the potential clients and the medium that they're using to get to your law firm's website in the first place. So, potential clients are looking for information. We know that. How do they get there? The same way that you likely might. They use the internet, and specifically search engines. Unless someone is specifically seeking out your law firm, there is a real good chance they'll start trying to answer their questions by typing in a query to Google. Roughly 80% of people do research before they buy a product or choose a service. So if what you're blogging about specifically answers the questions that they have, Google may well offer that web page in the search engine results. The discussion about how search engines work is outside the scope of this webinar, but if you are interested in knowing about that, I do recommend checking out our Content Planning Clinic and Introduction to SEO webinars. One thing lawyers should know is that Google is busy crawling the web all the time for new information that it can give to users when they make a relevant query. And that means that you're going to want to be publishing regularly. And I'm not talking about once a month here, but at the very least, once a week or so. The frequency of your publishing gives hints to Google about how often they should be coming back to check your website for new information. And the more high quality content that you put out there, the more Google has to work with, the more it has to give search engine users when their questions are relevant to the material you've provided. Okay, we've talked about publishing frequently, but what about what specifically you're publishing? Google knows that people use search engines to do research, and so of course they have a vested interest in giving users the best and most relevant information that answers those questions. Google would not have much of a business if people didn't find it useful, and therefore Google isn't happy when the content on your website is fluffy or superficial, copied from elsewhere, or just downright thin. Attorneys aren't going to get themselves ahead by publishing single paragraph posts that don't add anything new to the conversation. The rule here is that if you're going to publish material, it really needs to be high quality. And we'll discuss what makes quality blog posts in just a minute. But for right now, just know that Google doesn't like thin content. And in fact, it has specific algorithms designed to spot content of that nature. And they really avoid offering that kind of content to their users. So you're not going to do yourself any favors by publishing superficial content. Search engines don't like it because they know that their users don't either. Here's the last situation you might be in, and if this is where you are, it is a good place to be. If you're publishing quality content on a consistent basis, keep it up. This is the sort of magic intersection of what Google wants, what search engine users want, and what referral sources want. You're publishing useful information that answers client questions, and you're publishing it all the time. So much so, in fact, that you may end up developing a following. Yep, when people search on the web and they stumble upon your blog, they they may like the information you've provided enough that they subscribe to your newsletter, they regularly come back to see what you've written, they may offer your blog to other people who may need that information. They are more likely to engage with your firm and choose your firm over others when it comes time to decide who they feel is an authority, who they trust, who provides them with the most useful information that helps them to make decisions and assuage their fears about aspects of the law that may not necessarily be clear to them. So now that we've talked about this as the ideal scenario, let's talk a little bit more about why you should be publishing often. If I had to simply sum up why law firms should regularly publish content, it's because each time that you post something original, you are giving yourself a new opportunity. You are making a new opportunity for Google to find your information, for somebody to share your blog on social media, and above all, for potential clients to engage with your content and eventually your law firm. And the best part is you don't have to take my word for it. We are living in a time now when there's lots of studies and lots of data available to back this idea up. So before I talk about that data, let me say that if the thought of trying to fit a regular publishing schedule into your daily workflow sounds exhausting, again, check out our content planning clinic. We presented that a few weeks back, and it really helps you get a plan for how to take the stress out of being consistently productive in this area. Okay, back to the part about the studies. There are a number of studies that look at this topic, but one recent one suggests that businesses that published 16 or more blog posts in a month got almost 3.5 times more traffic than companies that publish between 0 and 4 blog posts monthly. And that was the hypothesis of this study, that that would happen. The researchers expected that they would see businesses very directly, that there would be a positive correlation with the number of posts that companies published and the sort of business that they were getting and the traffic that they received. But how does this apply to law firms? Anecdotes are certainly not data here, but what we've seen here at Lawlytics is very much in line with that study. Clients who are doing regular quality blogging have seen improvements in their law firm's revenue. Clients who were publishing but not regularly and have changed their methods to include regular posting also see improvements in the number of clients they represent and the number of cases that they have. Okay, so we talked about that game a little bit earlier. I'm going to turn it over to Dan for a second so he can give you a quick update. Dan?
Thanks, Tori. Okay, so we didn't get as much participation as I was hoping. So we don't have very many options to choose from here. But we'll go through these. As a reminder, you were asked to pick 3 things and submit ideas: an event, a legal topic, and a pop culture reference. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and set the stage by deciding which one of these topics we're going to use, and then ask you for the next step. So the first thing was an event, and the submissions that we got were Iowa caucuses, Super Bowl, Leap Day, and Valentine's Day. Out of those 4, I'm going to go ahead and just pick one. We'll go ahead and go with Valentine's Day. The next was a legal topic. The submissions that we got were liability, mass torts, and legal marijuana. Let's go with the most general one, which is liability. And then for a pop culture reference, we got Donald Trump, X-Files, Megyn Kelly, and 50 Shades of Grey. Of those 4, let's go with 50 Shades of Grey because, frankly, I'm tired of hearing about a couple of the other ones. So with those, we now have our topic set. So the topic is a combination of Valentine's Day, liability, and 50 Shades of Grey. The next portion of this, and I'm hoping we're going to get a little bit more participation than we did in this first segment, is to use these things, 50 Shades of Grey, Valentine's Day, and liability, to come up with a catchy blog post title. Come up with a brief opening paragraph, a sentence or two, come up with some headlines as far as topics that we might want to put into a blog post, and then related subtopics that might go under those headlines. So again, the topics are Valentine's Day, 50 Shades of Grey, and liability. And so with that, I'm going to be looking out for submissions and answers. And then we're going to use these things to see what we can create in terms of a blog post while we're looking at the structure, syntax, and so forth of actually creating a blog post within the Lawlytics system when Tori is done with her segment. And with that, Tori, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you.
All right. So on to our next slide here. We've talked a little bit about our webinar game, so let's get back to some fundamental stuff here. We've talked about why you should be blogging, why you should be doing it regularly, but how do we know what makes a good blog post? A good blog post has quality content. It's information that answers the questions potential clients have, and it's meant to be informative, educational, and sometimes even inspiring or entertaining or fun. But it shouldn't read like a legal document. And that brings me to my second point. It's got to be easy to read, and it's got to be easy to understand. Well, okay, it has to be easy to read and understand, but by who? Your potential clients. And that means that we really need to think about our audience here. Potential clients come from all sorts of varying backgrounds, education levels, and so forth. So attorneys are going to want to write short, clear sentences and avoid legal jargon. If a legal term does need to be used, attorneys should also strive to explain those terms clearly. Blog posts should also be written in such a way that they invite the readers to continue reading, and we'll talk about structure shortly. But let's talk about what makes people engage with a blog post. Maybe it contains information that a potential client thought they knew but they didn't, or contains something else that's surprising. Maybe it's a little humorous or inspiring. Whatever's written there, it should really invite potential clients to engage with the content and with your firm as well. And therefore, you may want to write about topics that tend to generate discussion or invite clients to share that content on social media or through their email and so forth. We've looked a little bit at what you should be doing with your blog post, but it may be just as valuable to know what not to do. So thin, unfocused content is a problem for the reasons that we discussed earlier, but also for the fact that readers have really short attention spans. If we don't catch their attention right away with the information that they're looking for, they are very likely to go elsewhere to find it. If the content is good but the structure is a problem, you may also lose a potential client. We have a better idea now of what makes a good blog post and what makes some not so good blog posts. With a well-rounded view like that, let's look at what captures people's attention. So here are some ideas that you may want to consider as you're crafting blog posts, one of which is including writing about a famous or relatable case, simply for the fact that they are just that. They are either well-known, someone has read about them in the news, or it's water cooler discussion, or it's a case that's universally relatable. Sometimes they're both. Example. I'm going to say 4 words right now, and I bet that regardless of the area of law that you practice, this is going to strike some sort of bell. If I say the words to you, McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit, even if you're not a disability or a personal injury lawyer, and even if you don't know that that lady's name in the story is Stella Liebeck, you can imagine that I'm probably referencing the very famous case in which a woman was scalded in her car by a very hot cup of coffee. That was in 1994. That's more than 20 years ago, and we are still talking about it now. Everybody's got an opinion about hot coffee. Everybody's got an opinion about McDonald's. Therefore, shareability, very high. Other things you may want to try are debunking myths that you often hear about your own practice area or just the law in general. People tend to share things and read things that they find surprising or unusual. That said, another way you may want to present is in the form of a listicle, an article that uses sort of a list format. People tend to enjoy reading this format because up front it gives you a sense of the time commitment you'd have to put into reading it. People read casually, just skimming text. They read with purpose, looking for a particular piece of information, and they also read in an engaged manner where they really read the piece from title to call to action. A listicle lets readers do all 3 in any manner that they want. Other ways that you might want to present involve multimedia presentations. So whether that's a video, an infographic, a podcast, people find alternative ways to present information really engaging if they're done well. What's nice about this is that compared to even a few years ago, you can now really do multimedia on your own that looks very professional, really gets your point across, and for a fraction of what it used to cost to do that. So here we have, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. If you've ever heard an expression like this, it falls into this category. In this case, this is how you structure your blogs. When we talk to people face-to-face or on the phone, I think we have an advantage in that we have vocal cues that lead people along as we share our story. But even then, if you've ever had to sit through a presentation where the presenter might not have been as prepared as they should have been, you know that you have found your own attention wandering elsewhere. Same thing happens on the web, but here we're really not afforded the benefits of auditory cues. People will look at the structure of a post to tell them whether they should continue to be interested, whether the information they want is there, and whether it's going to be useful to them. So if we return to this slide, the features of a good blog, we're now going to focus on one specific area. Let's take away those other points for a second and focus our attention just on this one. The fact that a good blog is easy to read and it's easy to understand. And that's more than just the content we're talking about. Even if you write fantastic content, it's not much good if it's structured in a way that doesn't guide your reader through it. We know that readers read web content very differently than the way they might read a book or a newspaper. And understanding a little bit about structure is valuable to you in order to keep the attention of your readership. After all, if you took a pair of scissors to a book of Shakespeare sonnets, what you'd end up with is just a bunch of words. It's the way that it's put together that's compelling too. If you want to know just how much structure and content matter, how about this? In 2013, a study found that most visitors scroll through about only 50 to 60% of an article page. What's more interesting is that it seems that there is no correlation between sharing and scrolling. People readily share articles even if they haven't read them, and that may speak not only to the quality of the content, but also potentially to the structure of the piece. Was the headline really catchy? How was it structured? And a good blog post isn't a post that just happens to have quality content, but it's highly structured and organized. Recent studies suggest that when people read content on the web, they do so in sort of a Z-shaped pattern. They'll start at the top left, they'll move their way to the right, and then they suddenly will draw a diagonal down toward the bottom left again and back to the right. They're scanning for information. Therefore, it's a good idea to structure your content such that it guides readers through the piece. Okay, so let's talk about the structure. Titles. You've got a topic for a blog post in mind. What in the world do you call this blog post? I've often heard it put that the blog posts that do the best are the titles which meet the 4 U's. They are titles that are unique, not ones you've seen before. They're urgent, therefore they give a sense of urgency to the reader that makes them want to read the post. Is this something important enough that they should be reading right now? Your title may want to indicate that. And they're also useful and ultra-specific. A person should know what the topic is at hand when they read your title and what they can do with that information. And, as we saw earlier, people share things that they haven't even read. Therefore, your title may be the first place that you're able to grab your potential client's attention, if nowhere else. Then we should look at headers. So HTML, which is the language that is used to display web pages and gives them structure, provides a set of text identifiers that we collectively refer to as a header. And these are indicators of hierarchy or importance in your content. Headers are important in ascending order. So primary header, or what we call H1, is the big idea. It's more important than the secondary header H2, and so forth as you see here. It's not unusual to have a web page or a blog post that has even 4 to 6 levels of headers. The search engines see your H1 content as the main idea, and then you can have several H2 or H3 topics nested underneath. And those headers serve a dual purpose. Not only do they act like indicators of emphasis to search engines, but they give that structure and style to web pages that readers crave if they're going to read all the way through something or find the most valuable piece of information. Okay, let's talk about the body. So this is the meat of your posts. And based on what we know about how people read very little or are difficult to engage, you're going to want to write an introductory paragraph that hooks your reader. The ways to do this are varied. You can start with an interesting fact or an anecdote. Sometimes even if you want to start with the end of the story and work your way backwards. It just depends on what is going to be the most compelling for your readership. In terms of catchy introductions, I recently came across a piece about the invention of what in journalism we call the nut graph. That's the paragraph that contains the valuable information in the story, the sort of so what factor, why should you care? And the story started with 3 simple sentences that had me hooked. It was, Barney Kilgore was tired of today. He was sick of yesterday, and in 1941, he had the power to do something about it. Okay, I'm listening. Did I read the whole piece? I got pretty close before my attention was diverted elsewhere, but that's my whole point. This came from a website that I'm now finding myself returning to because I thought the copy was that good and that informative. As for the main body, this is where the good stuff is. This is where you want to make sure you're writing short sentences and easy to read material. Remember, your potential clients may not have the same background as you, and therefore you really want to create content that's universally easy to understand, that invites potential clients to engage with you, to ask more questions, to see what your law firm can do about their case or their problem. In your main body, you've got an opportunity to provide even more information to your potential clients by linking to other parts of your site. Maybe you wrote a blog post last week about something helpful that's pertinent to what you're writing this week. Great. Hyperlink it in the text and give your potential clients another opportunity to learn something valuable and contact you. When you're done telling your potential clients what you want to tell them, don't leave them hanging. Make sure your blog posts have a summary. In some cases, you may want to include a call to action, the thing that gives potential clients the sense of, okay, I read this article or I found this website. What should I do now? Web users don't want to have to do any mental gymnastics to know what the next steps are that they should take. And while you don't want to beat them over the head with the idea that your law firm is the one they should choose, you do want to give them a little guidance where necessary. When you decide to use a call to action or a CTA, do it the right way. Make sure that your call to action doesn't leave any question about what it is you'd like a potential client to do next. Use action words like learn, discover, build, download, a quick, simple sentence. Maybe, for example, you've written an ebook called 10 Things You Should Know If You're Facing a DUI in California. You may want to put a call to action saying, download our free ebook on 10 Things You Should Know If You're Facing a DUI in California. It's a really low-risk activity for potential clients that's valuable to them and helps them engage with your law firm. Let's see. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. One last thing that I want to talk about here is 2 different types of content and how to differentiate between them. So high quality content all around is really the goal, but you're also going to want to consider what should be going on your blog and what's better left to evergreen content. Blog posts are great for timely, relevant information that's happening right now. Current event-related material is what you want here. Opinion pieces, case studies, things about famous events or people, these are all things that are bloggable material. Evergreen content, on the other hand, is best left for content that's unlikely to change, whether that's unlikely to change in a few years or just ever. The long-lasting content that gives some extra structure to your web page and blog stays continually relevant. That's the evergreen content we're talking about. So things that might go here could be aspects of the law that aren't likely to change anytime soon, those sorts of things. The very last point that I want to make before I turn it back over to Dan is just a quick chat about turning your blog into an asset. If you've got 15 minutes on your hands and you've got an idea, I assure you that you've got enough time to write and publish a blog post that will continue to support your firm for years to come. The benefits of blogging can be seen in the quality of the content, the frequency of the publishing, and how consistently you're doing both of those things. And blogging isn't just about the blog post that you publish right now. It's about what that post is going to do in the long term. And blogging really does act like a 401k for your law firm. The blog you write today will be useful for potential clients or referral sources tomorrow, the day after that, 2 years from now, and so forth. So the time that you put in now to write this information will turn out to be beneficial for your potential clients and your law firm's success. And putting in the time and effort now, blogging can really pay off for your firm. So if you're interested in learning more about how search engines work, how to plan your content, make the most of that 15 minutes, as well as things you should avoid on the web for the success of your blog, I definitely recommend checking out some of our other recent webinars at our blog. That's blog.lawlytics.com, and there you'll find a menu for webinars where you can see all the different topics that we've recently discussed. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dan, and we're going to go to our game. Dan?
Great. Thanks, Tori. Can you see my screen?
I can.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so I've been following along and making a list of the various submissions that were proffered for this game.
And Dan, let me pause you for one moment. I've lost your screen. I just want to make sure everyone else isn't lost either. Oh, there we go.
Better?
Excellent. Continue.
Okay, so can you see my mouse moving now?
I can.
Okay, great. All right, so what we'll do is we'll go through some of the suggestions in the context of actually building a blog post. And just before we get into that, just to remind everybody, we picked an event, a legal topic, and a pop culture reference. The winners were 50 Shades of Grey, Valentine's Day, and liability. And so what we're going to do here is we'll go to the Lawlytics control panel, and let's go directly into the blogging area, and we'll press the new button to create a new blog post. This combination of topics is, I think, going to prove to be a pretty good illustration of how we can create a blog post that's not only readable and legally relevant, but quite interesting and shareable. And so out of those topics, here's what the title ended up being: 50 Shades of Valentine's Day Liability. And I was paying a little bit more attention to these submissions than I was to the webinar itself. So I'm not sure how much Tori went over the idea of having numbers in the blog post title and going over different items and so forth. So Tori, chime in at any point as well. But this would be a very ambitious post if we were going to try to do like 50 different topics. But let's see how this would look. What we want to typically do is at least in the Lawlytics control panel, the title that you give your post is automatically going to be the top level header or an H1. And so that's taken care of. This is the main concept in your post. Then what we like to do is start with a introductory paragraph that kind of frames the what you're going to get for the rest of the post. The thing that we want to do in this paragraph, and here's what we came up with based on kind of a amalgamation of various submissions, is this: February 14th can be a romantic and exciting holiday for lovebirds and lawyers alike. Let's look at some ways a romantic night can turn into a slow dance with the legal system. So we're talking about various ways that Valentine's Day can lead to liability, kind of in a loose 50-point list, with maybe some pop culture references back to 50 Shades of Grey. Now, there were several different topics that were suggested, and I really like to start out with this one, because I think it really goes into something that's going to catch readers' attention right away, and that is the topic of fire. And there's all kinds of places that the imagination can lead when we're talking about fire. So here's our first subheading. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to go ahead and make this a second heading. It's going to introduce the rest of it. And then we're not going to, we don't have time to actually write all the content for this. So in the fillers, we're going to go, in the area between the various headers, we're going to use filler, just standard lorem ipsum filler text, which is standard on the web. And so imagine what the introduction would be here, 5 things that can go wrong when playing with fire on Valentine's Day. And then let's look at some of the other headlines that sprung off of this. So we're going to put in a subheading. Will homeowners insurance cover that kind of fire? And what we'll do is we'll make this a third heading because we're nesting it under this second one. And then let's go ahead and put in some more, some more filler. So we'll grab this text here. So this would be the paragraph talking about that. It could be more than one paragraph. Let's see. Here's another good one. Do I need a lawyer when explaining that at the emergency room? And the context of that was probably going to be pretty obvious in the context of the rest of the title, but you could certainly go like this, make that a third level header also, because this is of equal level to this. It's nested under when fire doesn't respect your safe word, but you could even underline the word that for extra emphasis. Let's go ahead and add another paragraph in there, and then we'll do one more subheading, which is this one, to go along with that topic. And this one, I'm going to give us a little extra space there. This one would also be a third level heading. And then we'll go ahead and again add whatever our text is going to be there. And then let's look at another one here. So the title that was submitted was this. Let's go ahead and turn this into a second level header. So Valentine's Day office lunch sparks liability when manager orders alcohol for employees. And then there could be get this cleaned up a little bit. There could be another paragraph under there, and then there could be subtopics under there talking about the person that submitted this wanted to talk about sexual harassment and how it leads to training and compliance. So it could be a whole set of employment law topics. Then there's some about let's see. Some about dining out, and fondue seems to be a popular topic. This is one that I came up with based on some submissions about fondue and eating fondue. So we'll make that another second level header. We'll put in some text. We'll go ahead and get to the legal topics. So here's one of them. When skin and dipping don't mix, can get your restaurant sued. So that would again be a third level header. And then we would add again more text in the middle. There can be a whole bunch of other things on here. So you get the idea. So when who is liable for food poisoning for undercooked fondue, that would again be a third level header. We'd put some more filler text. Here's one that came out of our writing department as they were seeing this. Nothing kills the mood like a skewer in the eyeball. And then let's see, here's a scenario that we can just kind of workshop here and turn into something. The band didn't show up for my proposal, no music, and she said no. Who do I sue? So we would want to come up with some kind of title for that. Maybe this section, if we're talking about more of a contract liability type situation, is something like this, facing the music. We would make that a second level header. The band didn't show up for my proposal would be a third level. Who can I sue? Maybe that's a fourth level one under no music and she said no. Where do I sue to get my cash deposit returned, and so forth. Those are all headers with information that we would want to fill in underneath that. Let's just take another look at a couple more. Here's one. and we won't go into developing subtopics for all these, but is an engagement ring a gift or consideration for a contract? That again would be a second level one. We would do an introductory paragraph underneath that. We would add subtopics if we wanted to. And here's one that I thought was particularly funny. But would also be very shareable. Can I sue over a broken heart? These are all things that, even though a lot of these are kind of tongue in cheek, you can add very real legal analysis to it. You can look for outside references and link to those outside references, whether it's precedent, whether it's news stories, whether it's outside pop culture references. The idea is with something like this ultimately becomes a very shareable piece of blog work. And you want to spice it up by adding pictures, by adding videos, and beyond the scope of how we get those into Lawlytics. But you can just use your image insertion library. Same with videos. Stick a map in there. Something to break up the monotony of just having text. But these are the kind of things that do get picked up by not only by social media, but by other more mainstream online publications that have large audiences. And so if you think about this, you can think about having really any combination of topics to put together to actually create a blog post. And so there's all kinds of things that you can come up with if you do end up having writer's block about what you want to blog about. That's really, I think, enough for this exercise. Let's move forward here and look at any questions and answers that you might have. Tori, did you have any questions that came in? I had written some down when you were talking and then deleted them, but have you seen any new ones?
I have not seen any new ones over here, Dan.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions then that were asked while Tori was speaking. If you have other questions, either about the webinar or if you want to go back and look at anything that we did in that demo, please put them in the questions area or in the chat area of the GoToWebinar control panel. The first question was, what if I don't have time to blog regularly? And yeah, it's there's always a balance between practicing law, having a life, and blogging. And certainly the 14 posts that Tori talked about can seem very ambitious, especially if you're a solo practitioner in a busy practice and want to have a life as well. And so there's a point where you have to strike the right balance in your jurisdiction and for your practice. Maybe doing one post a week where you set aside a half an hour or an hour on a weekend or early in the morning, one day a week to do it is enough, and you get the client flow and you get the recognition that you need. On the other hand, if you want to build an empire, you've got to figure out a good way to get those in. And you can leverage having associates do it if you have a good paralegal that can write for you. There's certainly a lot of services that you can contract with to write blog posts on your behalf. The Lawlytics writing department is very, very good at that, and we offer blog writing for attorneys on a one-off, so X number of posts in a given month, or on an ongoing basis, so you just know that you're getting whatever quota that you signed up for published for you, professionally written during the course of each month. But the important thing is to make sure that you, if you're not writing it yourself, that you and you have resolved to write it, that you make sure that the person that's writing it for you, not only understands what your goals are and what your voice should be and how you want your firm to come across, but also understands the intersection of marketing and thought leadership and most importantly, legal ethics, because there are a lot of things that we've seen people that have been hired, off of Craigslist or off of Odesk, that are very good writers that just really don't understand the nuance of writing for an attorney or even as an attorney can cause major problems by saying things that would be perfectly acceptable in normal advertising circles, such as, we're the best lawyers out there, or we guarantee that we're going to win, or something like that's obviously not ethics compliant. Looks like we have many other questions that have come in, so let me did,
Yeah, Dan, I just saw one here that I'm happy to answer. It looks like we have a question about how many words should a blog post be on average? And that is a fantastic question. So I know I had said earlier in the webinar that, you don't want to write a single paragraph here, but where are the limits for how short a blog post should be, how long one should be? In general, blog posts usually run between about 300 and 1,000 or 1,500 words. 300 being, of course, on the short side, 1,500 being on the lengthy side. And there, I think it's important to mention as well that we want to keep things short for our readers, but not short for the sake of sacrificing important information. So if you've really got something to say, don't be afraid to write a blog post that's 1,000 words. But if you have something that can be explained in 300 or 500 words, you can err on the short side there as well. It's really just about using your discretion there to determine, what the most valuable information is and what is the shortest route to get it to your potential clients.
Great. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Other questions that have come in. Let's see. I'll go ahead and take this one. Do you recommend linking to other blog posts or other parts of the firm's website? The short answer is yes, strategically. And so the way I look at it, and this is proven to be a good method of doing it in terms of not only keeping human users' attention, but also doing the best things for the search engines, is to only link to things that add to the conversation that you are conducting in that particular blog post. So, for example, if there's something that you would otherwise need to elaborate on or want to elaborate on that is already covered somewhere else, it's a good idea to link to it. Now, if that's within your own website, that's great. It's a matter of getting people to your other resources, and you can actually even do that strategically so that you can keep people going back to, for example, your evergreen substantive pages from your blog posts. So, in other words, if you're blogging about, let's say, the crime of theft, and you have a page on your website that talks about the elements of theft in that jurisdiction and what that involves, then you can certainly link back to that rather than reiterating it, and it's going to help your overall web presence. Similarly, you can link out to other sources. I think it's always good to link out to legislative sources. It's good to link out to news sources for the most part. What you would want to be careful about, though, is linking to places that are going to take your readers off of your website, where their focus is by nature 100% on you and your firm, and expose them to either distractions that are going to cause them to forget about your firm, or even worse, expose them to your competitors. And so you want to be very strategic about where you link to, but generous with your information. Let's see. Another question that I can take, unless and feel free to jump in if you have any ready, Tori, is should you allow people to leave comments on the post? By default, all Lawlytics blog posts are set to allow comments. You can turn those off. and there's a reason why you might want to turn them off if there's any kind of in your state any kind of ethics liability for people posting certain things on there. The safeguard with Lawlytics is nothing will get posted to your website and published on the internet without you approving it. So even if you have comments turned on, if somebody goes and posts on your website, uh, you get to choose whether or not it's displayed. If you have other attorneys, for example, commenting on a post that you did in a way that is substantive and adds to the post, absolutely that helps in many different ways. It helps that attorney because it's one additional area where they're getting an impression, people are seeing them and they're able to assert their expertise. It helps you as the owner of that post because it not only adds to the substance of the post, but um, it also establishes you as a credible legal authority figure worth interacting with. And that's the case whether that attorney agrees with you or doesn't agree with you. Some of the most helpful comments that are put on on attorney blogs are debates. And for example, they don't even really have to be head-to-head debates. For example, you could post a blog post about community property settlements in, say, California. And another lawyer might jump into that post and say, well, that's really interesting the way that you describe it down in California. This is the way that the law works in Washington State, for example, and this is how we approach things a little bit differently. And then there can be a healthy debate or discussion on that website that really adds to the overall conversation and really fleshes out some of the nuance that might otherwise bore the casual reader in the body of the blog post, but for both the search engines and for those readers who want to dive deeper, having that additional knowledge base in the comments area is very helpful. And as a practical matter, the way that the Lawlytics system works is every time somebody adds a post or a comment to one of your blog posts, your sitemap, which is a machine language sitemap that Lawlytics automatically produces on the software side and communicates with the search engines to let them know what pages are there and when they're updated. That sitemap automatically gets updated to say that there is new information on that particular blog post. And so every time that information is updated by having a blog post or a blog comment added, that sitemap gets updated. Google and the other search engines have a reason to go back and look at that post again to look at the new information. And what we've seen across the board is that when comments are well utilized, uh, the posts that have a lot of comments tend to get better ranking. Now, here's the caveat. There are a lot of legal marketers, so-called SEO people that don't know what they're doing, that try to sell links back to attorneys. And one of their preferred methods is to troll other attorneys' websites and try to post something on there with a link back to their website. You should never approve a blog post on your blog that says something like, great post, there's more information about this topic at, and then here's a link to another attorney's website. It's a bad practice. It's negligent on their part to even try to do that on behalf of the attorneys that they are working for, and it's also very harmful to your website, both in terms of the quality of content that's on there and also to your search engine rankings. So be very careful with that. As a practical matter, if you are a member of Lawlytics, you'll discover that the Lawlytics network exists in part to be able to help attorneys easily comment on each other's blogs without having to leave the comfort of the Lawlytics control panel. And so it's there to help facilitate that kind of interaction and meaningful discussion. Let's see. Um,
Dan, I've got a question here that similar to a question we had before, but I think there's potential to talk about this a little more in depth. The question is there a minimum length for a blog? Also, what's deemed too long since we know readers have a limited attention span? Fantastic. So, as I said earlier, in terms of minimum length, 300 words is sort of the minimum there. But in terms of what is too long, again, we have to think about, as this person commented, the limited attention span of readers. So I'd say 1,000 is long, 1,500 is pretty long. If you go further in that direction, you may want to consider either breaking it up into a two-part blog or potentially turning that content into maybe an ebook or something like that, especially if that information is absolutely necessary. If it's really long, if it's really necessary, you may want to break it up in such a way that it makes it more digestible for your readers. So whether that's having a couple different blogs, like a two-part blog that if there's a lot of information there, or an ebook or something downloadable, something like that, a multimedia presentation, just so that you're not overwhelming your readership and they don't become frustrated when they realize that this is a very long, intricate sort of discussion.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think that there are situations where if your pure intention is to share information and make it very easy for somebody to digest, for example, if you're really trying to connect the dots, talking about a complex social or legal issue, and the post lends itself to being 5,000 words, 10,000 words, whatever. um, I've never been afraid to run with that, and in my own blogging have a very long post. And what I've found is that when I've done that, although the post may take many hours to write, and it may even take somebody a half an hour to read once it's posted, it sometimes is worth it to just say, okay, it's all here. I'm going to give you an example. If you go to Google and you search for commoditization of lawyers, there's a blog post that I wrote a little over a year ago, talking about where I see the legal profession going in terms of how technology is commoditizing it. The article is called "How Much Is That Lawyer in the Window? The Secret Commoditization of the Legal Profession." And for commoditization of lawyers, that blog post has been number one for quite some time. And what we've noticed with that blog post is that even though it's long, lawyers are reading it quite often, and when they go there, they will spend a half an hour on that page digesting the material because it's there. I'm told it's well thought out, it's thought provoking, and so forth. And so for something like that, I don't want to say absolutely shy away from a huge post, or always break it up. I think as you blog and you get more and more into seeing what works and why, you'll get a feel for, okay, this one ought to be just self-contained, or this one is like something that we can do over a series. Similarly, we have seen attorneys who have struggled with their blogging, get on and try to just say, this is what happened in one sentence, and then post a link to somewhere else. That's really, it's not adding anything, and it's something that is, it looks bad, it looks sloppy. And so I absolutely agree. You want to try to make it 300 words. If you come up short, if it's 275 words and there's absolutely not another word that you can write about it, don't feel like you have to put in filler word just for the sake, or filler words just for the sake of filling it up and meeting that quota. But for the most part, it's just a matter of are you adding value as you're writing it. Um,
And as you mentioned, Dan, sort of in passing about the series idea, that again, I think is another great way, if you have a lot of information and you decide you want to break it up, to break it up such that people can consume it in bite-sized portions. And not only that, but I think there's an anticipatory element too, for those people who do follow your blog, that if you let them know, hey, this is a series, come back tomorrow, we'll be posting something new, people will anticipate going to your website and reading what you have to say because they know it's coming.
Absolutely, and having a series that they look forward to, not only drives them back, but also increases the likelihood that they're going to subscribe if you have a newsletter. It just gives them more opportunities to interact with, follow you, and so forth. And so, absolutely. Couple other questions that have come in. One question is there a way to schedule blog posts on Lawlytics so they're uploaded once a month and released one a week? We're working on that feature. I don't have an ETA for the time that that's going to be released, but it's going to be coming within this calendar year at some point, and we'll let you know as we get closer to releasing it. Let's see. Another question is, how important is it to include pictures and metadata for SEO? Okay, so metadata is a whole nother topic. There is a certain amount of metadata that Lawlytics will automatically add. Um, and then there's other things like meta description that you might want to add. That really doesn't have much to do with SEO at this point, but it does have to do with what potential searchers may see in the search results. And so it doesn't hurt to add a meta description. Adding meta keywords fields, there is absolutely no reason to ever add those. They're absolutely useless. They can even be counterproductive, and it's just an antiquated practice. In terms of pictures, pictures are very important for user flow. If you find relevant pictures, it's not a good idea to just throw in any picture just to break it up. But if the picture is relevant, that's great. And we've had people that have done very successful local posts that have gone and taken pictures of, let's say, local courthouses or police stations or businesses that they are in litigation against or blogging about. All those kind of things can be very helpful. And when those pictures are labeled correctly, those can also come up in Google image searches, which can also help. So another question is, should we put a social media link to new blog posts? I'm not sure I understand the context of the question, so I'm going to approach it from a couple different angles. Um, with Lawlytics, there's automatically social sharing buttons that will be built into the posts, and so people can share the post directly from Lawlytics. I'm not sure if that's the question. It's nice to have those. People do know to copy the URL and share it, but you want to make it easy for people to share. And then the other potential part of that question is about sharing the posts on social media. And with Lawlytics, you can automatically announce your blog posts when you publish them. Let me just go back here and down in the down in this area, if you have social media accounts attached, you can go ahead and announce this to your various social media accounts that are attached. You can determine what message goes along with it, and then it will automatically create a link back to the post, which is also a good idea. In general, you want to get people coming from social media to your site and blog, not the other way around. But yeah, the interaction with it in both ways is important. Let's see. And then the other question that came in is having a ghost blogger or somebody else writing your blog content for you ethical? This is a topic that's come up quite a bit, and our stance is that when you're an attorney writing a pleading in court, you ultimately sign it, you put your name on it, you're responsible for it. Even if your associate or law clerk has written it for you, or you've taken a lot of it from a colleague who has generously shared a brief with you or whatever, when you put your name on it and you sign at the bottom of the pleading, your name and your reputation as well as your bar license is what's stapled to it. You have to have a you have responsibility for it, obviously, ethically. I don't look at blog posts any differently than that, nor any content on a website. If somebody else is writing it for you, I don't see, there may be attorneys out there that have a different point of view on this, but I don't see anything unethical about having somebody else write it for you or edit it for you, and then publish it on your website, as long as if it's published under your name, you've adopted that as your own. On the other hand, if somebody were, say you were to hire somebody off of Odesk or Craigslist to do some ghost blogging for you, and they were to publish something in your name, and then all of a sudden you get that letter in the mail and it's the bar complaint about you saying something that is unethical or making promises or misleading, or there's some kind of liability there. If your name is on it and you've hired somebody else to write it for you, and you've caused it to be on a web property, your website that you own and control, I think the liability for that can and should be attributed to you, the attorney, and I think that that's how a lot of bar associations, as this becomes more and more common, will likely look at it. So, in other words, you don't want to go into court, into a deposition, or into a bar hearing with the excuse of, I had somebody in another country who didn't understand legal ethics and English, and fair trade guidelines or whatever, write this for me and publish it. I don't even know how to log into my website. I think that excuse is, while a lot of attorneys' legal marketing is purposely out of their control and out of their hands, that is an excuse, and you don't really want to go into something where your liability or your law license is on the line, without being able to say, I looked at everything, or I have a well-established relationship with the person that's blogging for me. Just like an associate that would hand you something that you've been working with for a long time, you might skim it and sign it and file it in court. That's reality. Liability is yours, and I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But just be careful what you put your name on, I think, is really what it comes down to. What other questions do we have? Do you see anything else, Tori?
I do not, at least not on my end.
Okay, well, let's give it another minute or so for any questions to come in. In the meantime, while we're waiting, we'll just conclude by thanking you, one, for attending. And if you have questions about your blogging or about really anything else having to do with your website or your legal marketing, feel free to contact us. For those of you who are currently Lawlytics members, it's best to go through the support ticket system, because then that gets routed to the right person. If you do that, you can just do it right through there. It'll automatically know who you are, and you can just put your message right in when you're logged into the Lawlytics control panel. If you are not a Lawlytics member and you want to get a hold of us, any of these contact methods will work. And let's just take one more look here. It doesn't look like any more questions have come in. So thank you, Tori. It was a great presentation. And thank you, everybody, for attending. We'll see you next week.